Chapter 14. The air was a lot chillier up here without the comfort of the gondola to block the wind and the heat of the balloon's burner. I shivered lightly, making the extremely warm cone I rested on all the nicer. Rainbow Dash sat on her haunches on the clouds as we both watched the hot air balloon navigate into position below. My waist and under my shoulders were hooked through the leather harness. To ease the strain on her, my back legs were resting on the clouds. It was vaguely similar to standing on pillows. Twilight cast some sort of cloud walking magic on me just in case, as she had said. My eyes remained closed as I gently drifted in and out of sleep. The barrier was hooked up to my life force still and made me tired far faster. It didn't help that I felt sick as well, although my insides seemed to be getting used to whatever my form now consisted of. I wasn't entirely sure if that's a good thing or not, but decided to just go with the flow for now. Rainbow Dash slowly breathed in and out below me, not seeming apprehensive at all. My head was tucked onto her right shoulder tightly, her mane flowing over me and mixing with mine. It kept out the wind nicely and smelled of a faint spice, oddly enough. She didn't seem to be straining in the least and just looked around quietly. Her composure surprised me. First lineup is almost complete. How are you two holding up? I heard Twilight ask, a voice slightly whispered inside of my ear. She had given the spell to all of us, saying it would last about 2 hours. It was some sort of basic distant verbal communication spell to the time things. Totally bored, Rainbow Dash groaned, shaking her head weakly. Her mane tickled my nose, and I tried hard not to sneeze. The urge dwindling, I sighed weakly, adding, "No changes. Just sleepy." "It's probably the barrier. I'd tell you to give it a rest, but Dash wouldn't appreciate that," Twilight replied. I mentally envisioned her trademark smirk. "Oh, that would be bad. Could you please get up for a little longer, Mentor?" Fluttershy asked hesitantly, disseminating a snicker from Rainbow Dash. Twilight groaned. "I wasn't serious, Fluttershy. How are you doing, AJ? Rarity?" she asked, sounding frustrated. "We'd be done Applebook a half-hour ago if Rarity would stop switching the flags out," I heard Applejack growl. I winced myself out of dozing and sighed at her volume. Rainbow started snickering even more. "Please! You simply need to pull them to the top faster. I mean, really now, those beauty have to match and complement perfectly," Rarity protested. It earned a low growl from Twilight, an amused giggle from Pinky, and a growl from Applejack. "Well, I never! How else is the poor mare supposed to see from up there? They must stand out!" she added after a huff. I didn't have the heart to tell her that landing lights might be better suited, not that they likely existed here. Actually, given my driver, perhaps the large bullseye pointed to a stun-on-grade air cushion might be the best idea. "But Dashie has really good eyesight, Rarity," Pinky suddenly spoke up. "Dashie?" "Totally true. My eyes are as cool as I am, remember?" Rainbow reminded, stretching out her wings and giving what felt like a cliché pose. "But isn't that a Pegasus thing?" Fluttershy asked timidly. Rainbow deflated and sighed, shaking her head. Her mane tickled my nose again, and I scrunched my face up. "I've got even more awesome eyesight than the average," she corrected, fussing. "And 3 times the ego," Applejack tacked on in a lower voice, sounding a little annoyed. Rainbow jerked her head and made a stomping motion, causing me to lurch forward and getting one of her mane hairs stuffed up my nose. Crap! I think it was a blue one. I tried to pull my head away, but it was far too late. "Hey, when you're as awesome as I am, you—" she started to declare. My entire body shook as I violently sneezed, blowing her mane sideways with a blast of air and mucus, getting her directly in the air. Rainbow Dash almost flailed off a cloud, a shrill "Yeah!" being emitted. She managed to fall on her face for seconds before we took a sprawling dive towards the ground. "What's wrong?" Twilight asked, sounding startled. Pinkie Pie must have recognized the sound, however, and burst into laughter. "Not cool," Rainbow Dash growled, scooping out some clouds in her hooves and trying to wipe her mane off. I blushed and gave a sheepish smile, feeling a little mortified and apologizing. I'm sorry, your mane tickles. Pinky gasped for air between bouts of laughing. That was so funny! My peasants told me he was gonna sneeze, and I was so gonna warn you, but I'm so bored down here, and I thought a prank would be really fun, so I stayed quiet. Of course, I didn't know it was gonna be such an epic sneeze, or I would have given you an umbrella earlier, but I forgot when the group of birds flew past. They were singing the coolest song, but I much prefer banjo. I wonder if a bird could learn to play one. Octavian might know. Of course, I was out of cake, so... Pinky... Twilight groaned. My headache flared up again as I painfully tried to follow her repeated topic derailing. And then Derpy smashed into the counter and sent baking supplies everywhere. It took over an hour to clean up, but that was a lot of fun too. Chocolate zipper is really hard to clean out of your coat, but oh so tasty! Must have stayed in the bath for hours because I was all wrinkly, pinky, and... She plowed on, apparently not hearing Twilight. Wait, what? Rainbow gave up sulking and started laughing instead. Pinky! Twilight shouted, causing me to wince in pain. Huh? The pink one asked, a moment to knocked out of the cacophony of madness she'd shifted into once more. The net, is it ready? Twilight asked impatiently. I sympathized with her pain. Pinky giggled merrily. Oh, that? Yuppers! It was done a while ago, silly Willy, she declared whimsically. I caught myself smiling, regardless of how tired I felt. Twilight let out a weak sigh and I heard a scratching noise, her pen on the paper. Pre-checklist is thus concluded. We're ready to begin our first round then, Twilight announced. I frowned at myself, wondering what was on full checklist now. Did she really need two? Rara stood up and flexed slightly, shaking her hooves one at a time. Finally! We should just do this. Whether it works or doesn't, at least it gets the jitters out, she pointed out. My body shifted at different angles as she stretched, and she smirked back at me. Are you sure you can do this with me on your back? I asked, a little nervous. You're light as a feather. I could haul you around all day, she assured, giving an absent-minded wave back at me. The powerful muscles were very apparent as they shifted under the skin. I honestly didn't doubt her. You really should put on a bit more weight, though. It's kind of sad to see Stallion as shrimpy as you, she tacked on shortly after, returning to a smirk. My ears flattened back as I glared at her. He doesn't need to. He's fine the way he is, Fluttershy defended. A twinkle lit up in Dash's eye, and I prepared for the most obvious retort. Applejack beat her, though. I think a bit of muscle will do him some good. It's a healthy look, and it'll go a long way to getting the mares interested, she lectured gently with a hint of amusement in her voice. What? Rainbow started snickering and nodded in agreement. Hey, that's not true. Some mares like the general look. Lots of muscles can be scary, Fluttershy nervously defended, voice barely audible. I noticed, interestingly enough, that they all seemed to instinctively quiet down when she said anything most of the time. They must be used to her. Twilight made a light tisking noise before adding, Fluttershy's right. Personality is far bigger than physical appearances. I, for one, greatly value conversation as well. Huh. Well, I'll be. I reckon you don't need to help with attracting mares after all, AJ muttered, now sounding even more amused. Ugh, that would just start things up, considering they liked me back. Why did she and Dash insist on throwing salt into the wound periodically? Wait, were they even talking about this? Why were we even talking about this? There's a choking noise and an almost inaudible squeak behind it, from two entirely separate voices. See what I mean? What was that? What is that supposed to mean? Twilight asked, sounding badly stunned. I kind of wished I could see her face now. The sand mare I was strapped to promptly burst into copious amounts of laughter and rolled onto her back, wiggling. I signed an automatic resignation as I was flipped upside down and dipped into the cloud. Okay, then. It only treated my legs as solid. That was good to know. For Celestia's sake, focus, girls! All four of you are correct. Personality is the most important facet, but an appealing body type is obviously not without its pleasantries. Rarity spoke up, intervening and cooling off the debate before it started, and probably saving us the better part of the morning. Not that I was complaining exactly. Listening to a bunch of cute mares bicker was certainly better than being flung through a potentially lethal quantum portal to another reality in attempts to rescue your other self. Pinky disrupted everything with a sharp gasp. Wait! This is perfect! We should all have a super awesome sleepover after this, and discuss what we'd like to see in somebody else. I'll get the snacks, of course, she squealed, sounding suddenly ecstatic. The blood started to pool in my skull. I couldn't decide if it was from the Pinky effect or me still hanging upside down. There was a collective groan from Twilight, Rainbow Dash, and Applejack. I think I heard a timid whimper in there somewhere too, but that might be the effects of the blood rush. Pinky, dear, it's simply a splendid idea, but we need to focus now. How about we plan all of the details after this fiasco's done, alright? Rarity suggested politely. Aw, phooey. Well, okay. I'll just have to make sure it's that much more fun then, the pink party mare declared, obviously not staying put for very long. Wonderful. I deeply look forward to it. Oh, also, I'd like to have a word with Fluttershy and Twilight in private after all of this, Rarity requested. There was a momentary pause before Twilight hesitantly agreed with, well, certainly, Rarity. I'm not sure why, but Fluttershy and I don't mind. I could almost picture her gesturing towards the prize-shaking ball of yellow firm feathers with her in the balloon. Can't feel my hooves, I muttered weakly, shaking the dizziness away. Oh, oops, I kind of forgot you were there, Rainbow muttered, rolling over again. The blood rushing out of my head disorientated me, and I momentarily clung to her neck as my head spun. Wonderful. Thank you so much for that, I muttered weakly. Rainbow snickered, unfazed by my sarcasm. Welcome! Throw up in my mane and I dang you off the cloud by your tail, she warned, earning a low groan from me. Dash, be careful with him, Twilight reprimanded as if I were a fragile technical instrument. Well, I was a little fragile, I guess. Yeah, let's get started though, Dash requested, walking to the edge of the cloud again and peeking over it. The four flags were barely visible to me, but I imagined her eyesight was several times better. Well, this was either going to be really awesome or be the most agonizing and painful moment of my brief life. Twilight's balloon was drifting off to the side of the point we were aiming for, and I saw the tissue-lined Pinky was slowly extending from the gondola. She drifted away from the underside of the balloon on her strange candy gyrocopter, and gave us a salute as she reached full extension. Personally, I thought Twilight was the insane one. Our goal was to hit the sonic rim right there, next to both Pinky and Twilight. Based off the explosion I'd seen from Rainbow Dash simply landing, I'd guess that a rainbow was significantly worse. For all purposes, I hoped Pinkie Pie was really good at bouncing at high velocity. Okay then. Markup spread, check. Flags lined up visually? Check. Balloon and Fluttershy in place? Check. Twilight started the final listing. I heard light scratching against paper with each item and assumed she had a physical list. Her level of preparation was impressive. Scanning past Rainbow's mane, I was frustrated that I couldn't manage to see Fluttershy. Where was she in place at, and what was her duty? Twilight and Rainbow's duties were obvious. Rainbow exerted an absurd amount of energy in however manner she managed to do it, and then hurled me through using the release cord on her chest. I'd been very adamant on being the only one to go through the portal, just in case. Twilight would then solidify the portal that I activated using her magic, and hold it open for me. Applejack and Rarity were on ground level recovery, in case something went wrong and Stumpony hit the net. Pinky was here for holding the target streamer in place and for mid-air recovery, which I honestly thought Fluttershy would be doing. Speaking of, I had no idea why Applejack had brought a massive tub of apples along, or why Spike was brought up to the balloon after we were dropped off. Something was off. I think Twilight was up to something, and suspect Rainbow Dash thought so as well, if the look she was giving Twilight indicated anything. Well, I suppose it didn't matter anyway. Net secured? Check. Applejack and Rarity in place? Double check. Duties are normal as well, and we're dead on. Twilight finished up. I sensed a bit of apprehension mixed with excitement in her voice. We ready to do this then? Rainbow Dash asked, grinning suddenly and shifting her way back and forth on her hooves. Twilight sighed uneasily. Is it too late to state that I think this is crazy? I'm sure, Princess Celestia could be here by as soon as Saturday. Probably. If I sent a letter... She spoke up quietly. Yeah, it's a little late to call it off now. We'll be fine, Twilight. Have faith in us, Rainbow retorted, bumping a right hoof to her chest and giving a nod. I dexterously avoided her mane this time. There was another sigh, more frustrated this time instead. Begin when ready then, Rainbow, Twilight acknowledged with a light swallowing noise after. Rainbow gave a curt nod, to nobody in particular, and started backing up. My nerves spiked up, and I realized I was now wide awake as my stomach started dancing. Mender, please Remember, please come back. You have to, okay? I suddenly heard Fluttershy whisper, almost drowned out by the thudding of Dash's heart underneath me. I swallowed weakly and squeezed around the Sandmare's neck lightly, wishing I had just a little bit more time. I'll try my hardest, Fluttershy. I really will, I returned quietly. Hang on tight, partner, Rainbow warned. Her voice went cold as I felt every muscle in her body tense and her wings jut out to the side. We took our final half step back upon reaching the end of the cloud. Her sleek, muscled body tensed, if but for a second, before snapping like a spring. One bound, then two. She skipped on the second, managing to clear the entire surface of the cloud in just those two bounds, wings up at an arc now. Marge skipped a beat at the same time her wings became a downwards blur, and we were gone. The side of the clear cloud disappeared frighteningly fast, and I felt my stomach lurch downwards into her back. The force of ascension surprised me completely, and I wondered what her insides were made of to take this so casually. Coiled steel? 3 seconds passed. The pressure was off as we hung in the air, still for a moment. She didn't flap as something rotated her with her velocity, turning her nose towards the ground with practiced precision. The rest of her body followed suit, and her wings tucked at an angle. It all happened so quickly I could barely keep up. The wind blasted my eyes suddenly as we dropped into a brutal 85-degree dive straight towards the ground. I closed them finally against the stinging and held on harder. Rainbow twisted and entered an extremely tight spiral in the air. We completed a solid 3 rotations before she snapped her wings up again and lurched out of it, trajectory heading right for the thin ribbon so far below, I guessed. Air flooded my nose forcefully, and I wondered if I'd get a nosebleed from this. Breathing became simple and now lethally hard as she accelerated further. Her neck straightened, her legs tucked in, and her wings angled tightly against her body. She became even more aerodynamic against the air. Somehow, we accelerated even more, slowly building beyond the already insane velocity. I tucked my head in as close to her neck as I could to maximize aerodynamics. The balloon rapidly grew larger as I tried to lock my jaw shut. My lips and cheeks were catching the flow of the air as they were pulled apart. My nostrils burned as well, frigid air blasting into them to match our speeds. She tucked in even more, like a bullet now. Thankfully, that comparison would fall short here. That's why you're doing this, Mender, to make sure it stays that way. Too slow! Rainbow shouted above the airflow. I watched her wings angle slightly and her trajectory curved. Our angle of descent spiked up to an almost 87%. Any further and we'd be going straight down. Abort, Rainbow! Angle is wrong. You're going to miss the target! Twilight shouted back. If Rainbow heard her, she didn't react to it. Our angle ticked even closer to 90, balloon looming even closer. We were off mark by almost 4 meters. We also weren't producing a sonic rain boom, it seemed. No, I can do this, Rainbow snarled, gritting her teeth as the air pressure buffeted us from all sides. It felt almost like she was elongating, forces tearing us backwards as she bullheadedly smashed into an impossibly strong barrier right in front of her. I suddenly realized why only Rainbow had done a sonic rain boom. Her very being was geared for this. Most would shy away from these kinds of forces, but she just stubbornly smashed on. Consequences be damned. It takes, to be figurative, a certain level of balls to see if you or physics would snap first. Either that or insanity. She lived for the rush, and I was both deeply impressed and terrified at the same time. Rainbow! I knew it, I heard Fluttershy growled, followed by, Fluttershy! Now! What was she doing? The balloon approached rapidly. There was no correcting our trajectory anymore. I hoped that the precise location wasn't needed because we weren't going to hit it. Shift the net, Pinky! I heard Applejack scream to the background noise of her heavy galloping. Then my breath caught. Twilight dove out of the side of her balloon. Fluttershy followed her by less than a half-second later, closing the distance through the air. No! We shot past him in an eye blink and I winced. No explosion of prismatic light. Either it looked different from within or we missed our altitude as well. What the hey? Rainbow screamed, wings starting to flinch in hesitation. Somebody has to wedge the portal, even if it opens well below the height of the balloon. Rarity spoke calmly, which was a strange sensation with winds from hell screaming around me. Shy Hazard, don't worry. Pinky added in a sing-song manner. Thank you, Pinky. I couldn't turn to look after all. Sadly, it looked like the ground was our next checkpoint. Giving in, Rainbow dropped our angle to as close to 90 as she could manage. It felt like my stomach dangled from my back hooves. Too much resistance, I heard her mutter weakly. The last of the clouds blew away and my view of the ground was now unimpeded. Not good. That meant we were running out of airspace to pull this off. Abort! Dash! So I called out desperately. It felt like my bones were starting to turn to mush as we sped up even more. Way past target now, our chances of this working dwindled into the single digits. Rainbow bottomed out our angle and started a slow rotation. It felt like my skin was going to tear off and I almost saw a physical wall of air we were indenting into. It formed a cone from her rigidly outstretched forelegs and widened out over us. It felt like she was squishing us together and breathing rapidly became impossible. My heart slammed into my ribs repeatedly as I began to make out the forest and trees below. What was she doing? This wasn't working, and if we hit the ground at this speed, it would take 2 weeks to find every piece of us. Realizing I was about to be reduced to the consistency of raspberry jam, my eyes slammed shut and I tensed up. Well, they definitely get rid of the link this way. Rainbow! I heard Applejack scream out, panic now evident. I can do this! Rainbow shot back as he rocketed towards the ground like a missile. AJ. Rainbow had reasons to live. Why was she doing this? Even if she pulled the rip cord here, she'd still crash into the ground instead. My thoughts from earlier returned. It was bigger than either of us. Maybe they had nothing. Maybe they hadn't even noticed. But maybe they were mere minutes from opening a stable portal to here. The potential risk was huge. Was I a hero? Did I set out to save this world? Hell no. I didn't want to die. Dying terrified me. But what was the alternative if I didn't want to risk it? Make this entire universe take the risk instead? I was just a normal person, even before I became a normal pony. The fate of the universe was utterly beyond me when I could barely manage the fate of my own breakfast each morning. But that didn't hold a flame to what was right. Now did it? It suddenly seemed so simple. Smiling then, I let go of Rainbow's neck and just let the straps hold me. My forelegs whipped backwards in the blink of an eye with a light snapping noise, going pleasantly numb instantly, probably from shock. There. Aerodynamics maximized. I heard Rainbow gasp as she felt it, but I cut off with, "Go." It was barely whispered, but she nodded and snapped her wings back further. The cone tightened, practically crushing us as I saw crackles of energy along the very tip. Individual trees were visible now, and the ground lurched into view with amazing speed. A familiar crater off to the right. A strange calm slipped into me as I put my trust into the cyan bolt of pony lightning that was dragging me downwards. A bolt of energy skipped off my left cheek as I wondered what would happen. No! I heard Twilight scream out as I felt the tingle of her magic trying to catch up with us. Too late. Rainbow seemed to almost outpace reality. She was the fastest pony alive, without a doubt. The blades of grass in the field burned away as they touched her forehooves. The cone of air snapped into a rainbow explosion that radiated in all directions, obliterating the dirt and grass alike in a sudden deafening roar. Then we hit the ground. Okay, that was a pretty odd sensation, I admit. We just kept going. I felt the ground as we passed through it. Rainbow Hughes distorting and twisting as all of our velocity was killed in an instant. Well, no, not exactly. Our velocity was still there, but shifted in another direction, I guessed. I had no time to consider it, however. The connection opened fully. I felt it. My mind lit on fire as I screamed, suddenly feeling myself in two very different places at once. He was me, aware of his own body as much as I was aware of mine. Two bodies, two minds, one consciousness. The immediate pain was dulled as I felt two sets of eyes, both closed. One was asleep. I suddenly realized that. His mind was dreaming, it seemed. Frowning, I felt the images drifting. The end of the world was played back in slow motion. So those were dreams I had visible when my pony body slept? A sudden apprehension occurred then. What was real if that was a dream? All I could get were the images from the dream itself. Frustratingly enough, no memories returned with the connection. My eyes opened wide as I forced myself to think through the disorientation. I was me, nobody else. I could feel him, and he thought like me, but he was asleep. He was also me, but that didn't do me any good, so I pushed it back and solidified my grasp on just me instead. My eyes focused again, and I realized I had gone rigid. Rainbow Dash flailed under me and ultimately went nowhere. We appeared to be in a strange prismatic tunnel of some sort. No! Flying isn't working and he's frozen still! Dash responded to a question I missed. You're moving down the tunnel though? I would have asked into the magic. It suddenly occurred to me. It had worked! We were passing through an active portal. Lines of purple light gently held it open as we drifted. Yeah! The air is thinner, too. It's like when I fly really high up. Dash complained. Uh-oh. Wait, my barrier was gone. My psion transportation showed a distinct lack of screaming in agony while being wrapped up in quantum flesh slime, however, so I guess that I was safe to touch now. Groaning, I let my muscles relax gently. The sharp pain from my forelegs told me that they were either broken or torn. Either way, they were useless, so I pushed the thought from my head. We might have a problem then, I managed to mutter. Mender! Twilight exclaimed, suddenly sounding happy again. Oh, thank goodness. We were really worried about you, Fluttershy added quietly, voice warming me up. Rainbow looked back at me and gave me a smile. Her eyes belayed nervousness, and yet a certain amount of relief. Had she thought she was going to do this by herself? Glad you're awake. I thought I'd have to haul you back unconscious. What's the problem? She asked, shifting back to her brash and annoyed facade in an instant. My images were dreams, not current information. I'm not sure if there's a localized atmosphere where we're headed. I informed rapidly, fighting down the headache. Dash frowned and looked confused, but Twilight beat her to the punch with, Oh no, that means there's no air, Dash! Like water? Dash asked, tilting her head slightly. No, like nothingness. It's a vacuum. That means there is no air or other objects of mass present. Space was our word for it, I explained. Dash seemed horrified, but finally got it. What the hell are we supposed to do then? I can't turn around and we kinda can't breathe there. Totally not cool, she declared entirely understatedly. The tunnel's one way, but I'm charging up a teleport spell to pull you two back. Ideas on not dying until it's ready would be appreciated, Twilight requested, sounding a little stressed. Admittedly, as our air thinned more, I was starting to get a little apprehensive too. Plus, Rainbow wasn't supposed to follow me through this thing. I couldn't let her die, even if I didn't care about myself. My mind whipped into high gear. Wait, I could still feel my other self. We were essentially the same entity, right? If I had end fingers, I would have crossed them as I tapped into my other self's energy pool. Rainbow gave me a weird look when I shouted, Yes! At the top of my lungs, almost crying in happiness. His entire energy pool had refilled while asleep. My current body was brand new, and its level of magical energy was pathetic in comparison to my other self. Tapping into it, I rapidly started forming symbols around Rainbow Dash, and I formed two independent, skin-tight layers of shielding. No hole was needed in me, as he was all doing the casting. Same as my last barrier, but this one held air in, sealing us. Pulling a massive level of air from the tunnel, I started feeling a large bubble in the barrier for storage. Whoa! What's this stuff? Rainbow asked, looking at her forelegs curiously. I pressure sealed us and made a makeshift air tank using my other cell's energy reserves. I explained curtly, still focusing on cramming as much air in as possible. There was a shifting sound and the tunnel started to disperse around us. I felt Twilight pushing as much air as she could down the tunnel, and I greedily sucked it up as it came. There wasn't much time, however, as we phased through another rock we were unceremoniously dumped into open vacuum. It wasn't as dark as anticipated. The light from our old star shining through the massive debris field. Impossibly huge chunks of planet drifted above me, and I realized in horror that this was in real time compared to Equestria. The chunks had already started to cool, and I knew heat loss through thermal radiation took a really long time. Something was keeping my other self alive then. Gravity was almost non-existent, and it took us almost 10 seconds to drift to the ground. Ours was one of them slightly smaller chunks of planet, it seemed. Rainbow Dash gasped, scrambling as she finally touched down, incidentally boosting us weightlessly into a jutting rock, which she latched onto and looked around. "Whoa! This is totally awesome!" she declared, finally starting to grin. Well, that wasn't expected. Considering it used to be my word, I had trouble matching her enthusiasm. "I finally got a lock on you two with my magic. You're ways off from the portal, probably having drifted off course due to the change in transfer locations," Todd reported. That didn't surprise me. Rainbow got a flustered look again, so I cut her off prematurely with, "She means you missed the target, so we popped out someplace else." "How far and what direction, Twilight?" "Hey, it's not my fault the aerodynamics were off and slowed us down," Rainbow grumbled, crossing her forelegs in a pout. As that's what she was holding on to the rock with, she immediately started to drift again as the rock slowly rotated. She let out a yelp seconds later and grabbed the chunk of planet once more. Tot let out a curious humming noise before sighing quietly in relief. "Only a kilometer or so. It's straight up from your current location," she informed a few seconds later. "And that reminds me, we're going to have a serious discussion about your risk taking when you get back, Rainbow," Abaddon suddenly spoke up. I suppressed a snickers. Dash blushed lightly. "I had it totally under control, AJ, don't worry," Rainbow tried to wave off. Abaddon let out a derisive snort. "Too late for not worrying, Sugar Cube. I thought I was going to lose you when you tried that there craziness, and I can't unfeel those feelings. Promise that you're never going to do that again. We'll talk when you get back," she requested, sounding surprisingly serious. "I know. Sorry, AJ. We can talk when I get back." Rainbow actually apologized, looking a little glum. "And please get Mender home too," Fluttershy ended timidly. My turn to blush. The Sandmare snickered and nodded to nobody in particular. "Sure thing, Shy. We just have to go up there and grab his other form, and then we'll be back in 10 seconds flat. Piece of cake," she assured, giving a friendly rock a slam with her hoof. Well, at least she seemed to be confident again. "You have cake there? Jealous! Eating cake in the space place sounds like so much fun!" Piggy chimed in, sounding a bit miffed. Actually, it did kind of sound fun, as much as I hated myself to admit it. "Nah, cake's what we're having after, Pinky. We're gonna throw one blinger or a party," Abaddon corrected affectionately. There was a gasp, followed by, "Yay! That's an amazing idea! A welcome home with your alternate reality self-party! I'll get right on planning," Pinky promised, causing my brain to split out error reports. How many types of parties does she have? How could she possibly plan for this type of situation? She was a genius or insane. "Wait, how did we get up here? I'm flapping, but nothing's happening," Rainbow asked, struggling to gain momentum using her wings. "Oh yeah, no air." "Oh, there's no air here for your wings to use for lift, and no gravity either. Give me a second," I requested, considering the issue. I could give her magic thrusters, but I'd rather leave her in control of the mobility. Reaction time was worlds ahead of mine. "Flying won't be like normal then. There won't be an up or down dash. Just find the direction you want to go in," Todd explained as I got another idea. Her wings! She was definitely used to those. My magic activated, and I started weaving thruster after thruster and magic symbols along her wings. I counted for her movement, and then gave a burst of thrust to simulate the amount of force she'd normally generate per flap. Perfect. It would make a lot of it would take a lot of thruster symbols, though. Dash didn't respond, and instead decided to watch what I was doing with her wings. I wove micro thrusters up and down the length of her wingspan. I hummed to myself as my mind worked. Main thruster on the root of the wing. Output uniformly regulated into ratio to that. All thrusters treated as auxiliary and conforming to regulation. I noticed I was going through a mental checklist as I catched the magic and smiled, finding it oddly comforting. "I'm attaching magic thruster discs to your wings and telling them to turn on and off with your movement," I explained gently, finishing with the left and moving onto the right. She nodded quietly and continued to simply watch. Curious, it seemed. "Oh, smart! That way she can use her talents fully," Todd agreed, giving a contemplative hum after. "They'll need to be calibrated, but it'll do in a pinch," I agreed. Remember surprised me by whipping her head around and looking up into the dust of chunks of rock. "Wait, did you hear that?" she asked quietly. "Here? You couldn't have heard anything. There's no atmosphere here," I reasoned, frowning. Sure enough, however, there was a light clattering. It sounded like rocks skipping off other rocks. A few moments later, I saw a few chunks of debris clatter into the side of our drifting sanctuary. There must be the tiniest bit of atmosphere still present. I definitely didn't trust it to breathe, though. There's something really big moving around up there. It's huge! Rem exclaimed, squinting into the breeze. I swallowed. Uh-oh. The garage couldn't still be here, could they? No, of course not. They only stay in systems they're interested in, with the emphasis of interest being planets or structures they decidedly didn't blow up. They blew this planet up, so why would they stick around? Unless, of course, they found something aside from the planet interesting. My blood ran cold as I shivered. No, it couldn't be. She's right. There's a large moving object close to the portal that's emitting heat and light. I can't get visuals through this thing. Ugh! Twilight confirmed. Damn it. It needed to be identified. What shape is it? I asked cautiously. They're predictable, if nothing else. They used technology with singular purpose. Every ship they had, even if complex and massive, only ever had one purpose or theme of purposes. Yeah, and how big are we talking about here? Applejack asked curiously a few seconds later. I could almost picture Twilight frowning. She let out a low exhale, probably concentrating again. It seems to be the shape of an angular turtle shell from the front. I can't feel the back, so it's at least 2 kilometers long by 1.5. Oh my goodness, Applejack muttered. I groaned weakly in agreement. That's big, right? Ramesh asked, looking exceedingly apprehensive. I nodded and peeked through my memories for comparison. Think Dragon Mountain, but moving? Twilight suggested a few seconds later. What they were supposed to do about that? Remo growled after a moment of horrified shock passed. It's a research vessel without heavy military weapons. Grab my other stuff and flee in terror through the portal? I offered, just to toss it out there. In reality, I doubted it would be so simple. The size and shape led me to believe it was one of their research frigates, which was, well, bad. Rainbow Dash stared briefly for a brief second, before snickering and nodding. Admittedly, that sounds awesome. I may be awesome, but taking on a mountain is pushing it. She finally agreed. Especially one with tachyon lasers. I tacked on, doing the math in my head. We were 2 dinky sources of body heat amidst the still warm planet wreckage. Chances are they had no idea we were here, which gave us a stealth advantage. There was a light huff. Is that something big and bad from your world? Applejack asked, sounding a tad annoyed at my vagueness. Technically still in my world, thankfully. And yeah, long-range pulse lasers meant to blow nifty holes in reinforced plating, bypassing traditional shielding. I elaborated, finishing the other wing finally. What of magic shielding? Twilight asked hesitantly. I smirked and shook my head. If angled right, it skips right off. They really hated our magic, I informed. Still glad my specialty was barriers and support magic. Sweet! We have a fighting chance then! They won't know what hit him! Rainbow agreed, sliding naturally back into a confident, normal self. Laughing, I shook my head at her bravado and activated her thruster arrays. She gave a surprisingly giddy grin and gave an experimental flap. We smashed into the bottom of the landmass above us less than a second later. Me first, of course. Whoa! She yelped, rotating me off the rock and standing upside down on it. My head spun and I coughed lightly to flex my lungs back into inflation, wheezing. Oh well, I didn't need those vertebrae. Ponies have extra, right? Right? Can you turn them down a bit until we clear these racks? She requested, looking back at me. My head cleared again and I winced, a sharp pain reminding me of the condition of my forelegs. I glanced to the right and saw that the leg had come undone from being tucked under me and was wedged against the rocks. Can you use your wing to shove my right foreleg back under me so it doesn't hit anything? I asked, gritting my teeth sharply. You can't do it yourself? Dash asked skeptically, turning and looking at the mangled and swollen limb. Her eyes widened significantly. Not exactly. They're either broken or have severe muscle damage. Not using magic to find out. I grumbled impatiently, you wishing the agony would stop. What? Twilight shouted over this spell. There was a sharp intake of breath, followed by a light squeaking that was decidedly very Fluttershy in nature. Rainbow gently took her wing and stuffed the leg back under me. Oh dear, this is simply the worst possible thing that could have happened. How did they get hurt? Rarity asked, sounding in her own vocabulary, simply mortified at the thought. I didn't have the heart to retort that having our flesh sizzled off by attacking us would be a little worse. Apparently, letting your arms go limp just prior to... Ah! I yelped as Rainbow secured my leg under me before pulling it together and continuing. Ah! Prior to sonic rainbow velocity is a really bad idea. Air friction did a number on them. Rainbow frowned, but nodded. Both front legs, right? Can you manage? She asked, looking back in the direction of where the other me should be located. I smirked, masking the pain with a confident expression. I used to be a soldier, of course, I assured. It was a rarely spoken of language. It didn't actually mean of course, but instead that the mission was way more important and stopping now wasn't an option. I recalled suddenly having heard it a lot. Most of the speakers of the phrase and its many variations hadn't made it. Oh wait. I was technically the only one to make it at all in all probability. Oh no. No, I'm pretending to teleport you both back to safely still, Twilight protested. Twy, we can't leave without his other self, Dash reminded, scratching lightly at the loose dirt along the underside of the rock we were on. There was a light gasp almost instantly. Oh no! Please don't do that! I'd have to rewrite all of these cool welcome back with your alternate reality twin banners! Pinkie protested. You're making the decorations now, Pinks? Applejack asked, sounding just perturbed. Oh, it's a good idea, Pinkie. You might need medical attention first, is all Applejack is saying. Fluttershy spoke up. There was a momentary pause as I contemplated exactly what it was like to be Pinkie Pie. Ooh, okay. I'll decorate this hospital room then, and we'll party there instead, she corrected, not really missing a beat. My head started to hurt, so I finished turning down the thrusters instead. Rainbow lightly flapped off of the chunk of rock, doing a spin and landing back on our original one. She stabilized herself and then grinned back at me. At least let me lock onto you two and chart up the teleports. Then I can whisk you away in a moment's notice. So I finally consented. Wait. Twilight, how visual is that locking spell? I asked rapidly. Huh? Why? She asked exactly as she cast it. Ron and I both became distinctly aware of a sudden flash as two beams of purple energy homed out of the rocks like energy hornets and smashed into us. We were tagged with a light purple glow after. There was a sudden flurry of movement, and I saw several beams of light shine down into the debris, following the purple light. Ah, crap!